I'm Gary Venner, CEO of IFA Acquisitions, and I'm joined by Glynn Mummery, insolvency practitioner and partner of national business advisory firm FRP Advisory, where we continue our informative question and answer series on our YouTube channel to provide top tips when selling an IFA business and an insight into market conditions faced by company owners that are looking to exit and liquidate. The title of this video is coming up on our screen now.
Continuing with this thing for me putting myself into the place of a business owner looking to sell. Fortunate enough, found somebody that's prepared to buy my business. Is there any typical structure that I could expect? And by that, what I mean is, will there be any sort of handcuffs placed on me? Will I be expected to work within the business? And I know that every situation will be, it's going to be different. But is there any kind of general things out there that people can kind of just almost expect to happen?
Sure. Okay. So to answer that is every case is individual. And what we would start off is ask the vendor what they want to do. Because we will have acquirers that will be happy to do what we call a sell and go or a sell and buy, a sell and stay, yeah. And so if the vendor has a preference, we should always stick with that, yeah, because there will be acquirers for both. We used to find the old days when we were doing this job several years ago, almost sell and stay on for the whole deferred period was the norm, and acquirers felt that there was the lower risk area because clients would still see the vendor still involved with the business and it would just phase out gradually. We see that less now. I would say 80% of the deals are typically sell and go, but it's not. No deal works well if somebody just disappears overnight. No. What really works well is making sure that the vendor is fully involved in the communication process. So clients are communicated with in a very succinct and reasons why they have chosen their acquirer, what the new acquirer offers, the benefits. I mean, actually painting the benefits of somebody's going to offer a better service often is actually quite a good position to be in here. And then being involved with the handover, sitting in on that introduction to the new advisor. That works really well. And for many contracts, you can expect in there to be a clause that says to stay in a cooperative manner for the whole duration of that deferred period as well. I think that's in both, the acquirers and the vendor's interest. No client's likely to get lost. If it just needs perhaps a telephone call just to remind an advisor, let's say we're going through some market turmoil, that they've discussed this before over many years and it's about time in the market rather than timing the market, etc. And they just want that familiar face. So you don't have to be authorized to give advice to really make the deal work. Handcuffs, an acquirer is really going to want to make sure that the vendor is not going to come back into the industry. So for most of the deals, it's typically when people are looking to retire. And that's a really good position to be in. It makes the acquirer feel that if somebody is not going to be back in, advising for say 3 years or 4 or 5 years, then it's very unlikely that advisor, especially at their age, is ever wanting to come back into the regulation side and that, because that's another factor why owners do come to us, because they're finding the mounting regulation, whether it's MiFID II, PROD, now we've got Consumer Duty, is something that they want to sort of get rid of. So overall, we would expect there to be restrictive covenants in the contract. I would say typically it will be between 3 to 5 years. There's a difference of opinion sometimes. It's always making sure that a court of law would accept that that was reasonable and that it wouldn't nullify the contract by being excessive. You would expect those areas to be in the contract.
obviously I deal with a business when it comes to when it's reached a point and the shareholders are looking to extract their value. I come across situations whereby there hasn't been a sale of the business, and it really is just the directors, more often not so with the shareholders, just looking for their exit, looking for the liquidation. Likewise, we of course deal with those entities where there has been a sale and I'm left with the cash. In your experience, is it simpler to try and sell the business? Are there less hurdles? Or is it simpler just to have that closure? What would be your experience there?
Well, the simpler way often for a vendor, and this depends what the entity is, whether it's a sole trader, I think, a partnership or a limited company, because for some vendors, if they've got a limited company, it is potentially better for them to sell the shares. Because it becomes, they sell the whole thing, and it's for the acquirer to take it all on board, and they can deal with the deauthorizations and etc. and the closing down of that company, or taking it over as a change of control and running that company for them. So the vendor is a straightforward process really of them moving away from the business. From an acquirer though, there's more things for them to have to consider doing if they're buying the shares, which would mean in that situation they need to follow the due diligence process much more deeply, because they are literally buying the past advice ever since the company was created. They need to make sure that if there have been any change of ownerships, etc., that they're all well documented. You don't want some previous owner coming back and putting in a claim that they are due proceeds, etc. So there's a lot more to do for an acquirer on the purchase of a company. Having said that, some things are simpler because the clients have already signed a client fee agreement with that company, so taking it over, nothing's changed. So the fee income continues to come in. So again, you're just really just having to weigh up what is best, and also the cost differential of both as well, because there will be a lot more cost if you're buying a share entity as well. And of course, if it maybe for that business, is the value really worth it, or is it easier to just simply close the business down, I guess? Yeah. And you may find that, particularly if they haven't got as high a recurring income, that because it's the recurring income that normally drives the value of a business. Don't get me wrong, if you've got a very large mortgage or protection business, it's always going to have a value, because we are looking at the EBITDA, we're always looking at profitability as well. But overall, those businesses aren't marketed in the same way. If you've got one advisor firm that's as a mortgage and protection advisor, simply they normally close, and you might have an arrangement like an introducer arrangement, that if somebody else says, well, you introduce me those clients, and if I do business, I'll do a fee share for the next piece of business, whether that's 20%, 25%, etc. on there. So I think it's just really sort of looking at the overall casing, but we would be delighted if anybody's considering that to talk about all the options that are open to them.
You mentioned one thing there, costs. It's always interesting, isn't it? Or anybody that's looking to sell their business, it's one of the key questions. If I was looking to sell my business, what would be the costs I would need to consider? In the round as well. What type of professionals would you be recommending that I engage with?
Well, first of all, I'm really pleased to say, and good news is, if you come and talk to a broker, most brokers work on a buy side broker fee. Yeah. So from a seller, there's normally no fees involved. Now, that doesn't always apply, because sometimes there is a preference to have a sell side broker arrangement. But in the main, so that's excluded. The sort of costs that you can expect, first of all, will be legal costs. And they will vary. There will be more, generally, if it's a share purchase than an asset purchase, because there's a lot more involved in the actual sale and purchase agreement. The other cost would be if they are involved with the liquidation. So you need to bear that in mind as well. Also, whether there needs to be some runoff cover in place there as well after the sale of that business. So it changes there. From a acquirer's point of view, they will have extra costs there because they will normally be paying a broker fee if it's coming through a broker. Secondly, they'll normally instruct their solicitor to create the sale and purchase agreement. So they tend to have a higher cost than the vendor, and as I mentioned, it's likely to be higher again if it's a share sale or share purchase than it is if it was an asset purchase. And also, they would normally instruct, either they've got the facility, the in-house expertise to do it, otherwise appoint external compliance and accountants to make sure the validation and the due diligence of past advice and that the financials are accurate. So those are the typical costs really. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and switch on post notifications so that you won't miss our next video in this series when we discuss market conditions faced by company owners that are looking to exit and liquidate, and an insight into M&A situations by two industry experts, me, Gary Venner, CEO of one of the UK's largest specialist brokers in IFA acquisitions, and Glynn Mummery, insolvency practitioner and partner of national business advisory firm FRP Advisory, who are a leading national business advisory firm.